Why don't you sit down, put your mic on. We're going to mic check you, and then we'll see.
I looked at today, too, the maps of in 2016 where Trump won versus Cruz. They had a really close one. And Sanders versus...
Cruz was the guy in this at this point.
They were like 0.1% and 0.2%.
But was it always, Cruz wasn't always his...
No, but in Missouri, it was. Okay. Let me get on. Mississippi.
Getting ready for Decision 2020 live cast with Casey Nolan, political editor at 5 on your side. Casey's going to put his microphone on, and then we're going to do a little mic check with him, and then we're going to get going.
Are we on the air?
Not yet.
Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Then this is what we're going to do. We're going to go at 7:04.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to put the slate up and turn the volume off, and then at 7:04, I'm going to turn the volume up.
Go.
You can, will you kill the volume on that TV? I cranked it up. Just turn it off. On the button on the top of the TV.
Shelly, we're going to go at 7:04. And then I'll cue you, Casey, about 7:01:15.
Say that one more time.
We're going to hit it 7:04.
Okay.
And then I'm going to wait till about 15 seconds, and I'll just cue you.
Okay. So
Remember?
the Washington Post is saying Missouri too.
For what?
Biden.
Calling it.
And when we get a result, we'll probably go another 10, 15 minutes maybe and wrap it up. Once the state is called and we know, we don't have to keep going.
Well, that's different than what Carol just told me 10 minutes ago.
What'd she say?
Basically talking to What do we know so far about the actual fewer people identify themselves as liberal?
Which would make sense, too, if you saw more independent voters crossing over.
Wait. We're hot? I don't think they know what they've done, Anita. They've turned us loose on Facebook, on KSTK.com, on YouTube. I don't foresee us breaking any FCC rules that we have to adhere to on TV, but I think we've got free range. Thanks for joining us. It's election night, Missouri's presidential preference primary. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
Here, let me bop down a little bit because I feel like there we go. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
So the news is right now, the race, of course, on the Democratic side was Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. They both wanted us. They both felt like they had a chance to win us over because they were both just here.
Right.
But the Associated Press says just a couple of minutes ago, it's official. Joe Biden, they're calling it. Joe Biden has won both Mississippi and Missouri. So let's start there. Any surprise for you that Joe Biden wins? Because thinking back to 2016 when it was Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, you were telling me one of the tightest in the country, about what, 1,500 votes?
That's right. So Missouri was a very close race in 2016 on the Democratic and Republican side, actually. But Hillary Clinton eked out a win over Bernie Sanders by about 1,500 votes. But this year, the way things are going, younger voters are not turning out as at high of rates, and we saw that in Missouri too. We see Joe Biden really surging with older and African-American voters, and also taking some of those white voters without a college degree that Bernie Sanders did really well with. Joe Biden is actually taking some of those that Hillary Clinton didn't. So I'm not surprised to see these victories for Biden.
It's not surprised to see them be able to call it
Yeah.
basically 1 minute after 7 when the polls close.
Right.
Younger voters typically do not turn out the way older voters do. You're saying it's even less this time, you think?
Yeah, so in 2016, younger voters were turning out at about 1 in 5, so at 20%. And so far this year, we've only seen them turning out about 1 in 8, so only about 15%.
Nationwide.
Nationwide, yeah. So from what I saw, under 45, I'm talking about 18 to 29-year-olds, under 45 was down in Missouri from what I've seen so far with the exit polling. But it seems to be a trend this year. We see younger voters turning out at lower rates, which is not good for Senator Sanders.
And I was just going to say, that's Bernie's core group right there.
Totally. He needs to turn them out.
The president, of course, is going to carry. There were 5 other Republicans on the ballot, but the president's going to get Missouri. Well, in fact, there were 22 on the ballot still,
right.
even though people had dropped out. Are we going to see? You think people? You predict any protest votes for Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, or do you think they've coalesced around Joe Biden?
I really think they're going to coalesce around Joe Biden. Certainly, no other candidates other than Biden and Sanders will hit that 15% threshold.
Yes. Okay. Talk about that real quick, because we heard a lot about 15% viability in the caucuses, but that has a role here too. This is obviously a primary where you cast your ballot, but what are we really fighting for here? What are the candidates really after?
So Missouri has 8 congressional districts. In each of those districts, to get delegates, a candidate would have to reach a 15% threshold to get the delegates from that district. There are also statewide delegates. And so the way the Democrats and Republicans do this differently. The Democrats do it, it's proportional. So
Republicans, if you win Missouri, you get all the delegates if you win by 1 vote.
that's right. So the way they've set it up is whoever gets over 50%, it's winner take all. And these rules can change from year to year. Okay. And so, there we go, projected winner, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, it's official. You heard it here second on the live stream. If you have an AP alert on your phone, or a KSTK app alert, 5 on Your Side app had it as well.
Hey, Casey, just remind our audience that we're on Facebook Live. If people have any questions, they could certainly type them in here, and I'll be happy to relay them to you.
That was Jordan, our digital director here at 5 on Your Side, and his reminder to everyone is we are also on Facebook, and that might be the easiest way. We would love to answer your questions, so find us on Facebook and put your question there. Jordan is monitoring that. He'll get them to us. We'll get them answered as best we can. Can they also text us, Jordan?
Yeah, they can use the text number. It's on the screen.
Okay, if you see 314-444-5125, that's our actual number here at the desk that you can now text, and we will be able to see your text message, and we'll answer those questions if we get them as well. Fantastic. Thank you, Jordan. Jordan Palmer is here with us, running the show editorially, and then Shelly is over here running the cameras for us as well, our production whiz. So thank you both for being here. And then I also, just as we're setting the table here, it won't just be Anita and me. If you hear some talking offset, those are our guests that we have. We have the head of the Republican GOP, the chair of the GOP in Missouri. I think we'll talk to her first, and then we have some Democrats, and then some folks from kind of a strategy perspective we're going to kind of try to get a lot of information on as best we can for those who would like to know what is going on in Missouri politics. Jordan.
I got a question here from Joey Wallach is asking, is voter turnout up or down compared to the 2016 primary?
Joey wants to know, if you couldn't hear Jordan, is voter turnout up or down, do we know, and compared to 16?
Overall, so far this election season, particularly on Super Tuesday, voter turnout is up. And from what I've seen with exit polling, it's also up in Missouri.
Also up in Missouri, but we were just saying a minute ago, down with the younger voters from 18 to 29, so that means our older voters came out in higher numbers.
That's right. And when we say up, we are meaning up on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, since it's not really a contested primary, turnout might be low on that side. So really, we're monitoring turnout on the Democratic side.
Excellent point. Which brings up another issue. This is an open primary.
Yes.
It's perfectly okay for a person who self-identifies as a Republican to go take a Democratic ballot and cast for one of those. Do you think that might have happened, and what would be the motivation or result there?
It could have happened. I was talking with a Republican official last week, and he said, I love the idea of an open primary. I could go vote for Senator Sanders, who I think will be a better opponent for Trump. However, there's no evidence that people do that in large numbers.
Okay.
And I would say in general, I don't usually state my opinions, but I favor an open primary because my goal is to get as many people voting as possible. If we had a closed primary in Missouri, that would mean you had to be registered as a Democrat
Extra
or
step.
Republican. It would also mean independents might be prohibited from voting in primaries.
Which traditionally, Missouri have a lot of people that, correct me if I'm wrong, that at least identify, they want to believe they're independent.
That's right. Most independents lean towards one party or the
Right.
other, but increasingly we see younger people and lots of people not affiliating with a particular party. And so I would hate to see those people left out of the process.
Absolutely. Any more questions as we're going here so far? We don't want to leave anybody out. Is this a good time to, anything else you want to talk about before we bring in Gene? Because anything, then there's a lot more we can tease out here that we've seen, especially as we get more results, specifics in. But anything you want to talk about that you know so far about today?
No, I mean, I think that we can talk about particular voting blocks, but I say let's bring Gina.
Okay. Do we have any sort of official way of calling for a guest? I feel like I need a button right here. Can we make sure we have a button for the August primary, all right. I was told no jokes.
I'm
sorry.
interested to hear what Jean thinks about open primaries as well. If she thinks that Republicans may have crossed over and voted, or maybe some Republicans who, decided that they're not supporters of President Trump and they wanted to vote. So I'm interested to hear what Jean has to say.
Fantastic. And this is the first time we're kind of doing this together, so please, I talked to you this off camera, but jump in. I want to hear your questions as well. This is by no means, no one has the floor here. And Jordan, if you just offset just a little bit there is miking Gene up for us. Gene Evans, thank you so much. Have a seat. Adjust your chair as needed. I had to bring mine up, and then I felt like
I'm short, so I keep mine up high.
I'm tall, but I still feel like I'm on the ground here. So how does this?
There you go.
Oh,
Perfect.
Well, that's a little.
Does that feel better?
I'm looking to see, I don't want to be.
Yeah, I'll just take,
look at that.
you look fantastic. If you want to take my advice, personal experience, I try not to look at myself at the monitor.
Totally.
Okay.
Okay, so this has been all about the Democrats, at least in terms of the coverage for the most part locally. We've got Bernie versus Joe. They've been in town. We've been hearing from them individually and their supporters. You guys are still in this and won it by 19 points plus last time. Are you just kind of sitting back waiting to make this all for naught?
Oh, no, we're not sitting back and waiting. No, we're working very hard. We're working hard in Missouri. We don't take anything for granted. Working hard across the country. There are hundreds of RNC staffers in the 17 states that are important, or swing states potentially. We don't have any RNC staff here in Missouri because we are more than plus 10.
Yeah.
They feel pretty confident that Trump will win here. As recently as January did some polling, still at plus 10. But we have a lot of other races as well. So we have a congressional race here in the St. Louis area for our Congresswoman Ann Wagner. We have the governor's race all the way up and down the ticket. So we have a lot of other races that we're paying attention to. And, it's not that we, whoever the opponent is, we feel like we're prepared for that, but it's also important to know who that is, because anytime you're competing, you want to know who you're competing against, and you want to be able to define your opponent, whoever that candidate may be. So those are some of the things we're looking at and seeing, through this whole process, watching the Democrats get farther and farther to the left. And it seemed like at the beginning, from the very get-go, when they said, how many of you would have free health care for illegal aliens, and they all raised their hands. And that was a signal to us that the Democrat Party, was going to continue to move farther to the left, which is a good sign for us, because we still think that both Missouri and the United States are center-right.
Are they though? I mean, if they got together and decided on Joe Biden, I mean, he is, I don't think the farthest left of all the people who started this competition. I think a person could argue they've kind of drifted back to the center, and that they're trying to take a more centrist approach.
I think that's what they're trying to do, but if you look at what he has said through this process, he has said the first thing he's going to do is raise taxes. He has said.
Now, come on, nobody really says that.
He actually said that. The first thing he would do is repeal the Trump tax cuts. he said it. Look at my Twitter feed. You'll see a video of him saying it on there. He said that he wants to offer free health care for illegal aliens and also ending private health care for Americans and expanding Medicare for all. I mean, we have a lot of people in St. Louis and in Missouri who worked very hard, walked the picket lines even to get their health care and to get better health care, and they don't want to see that taken
Well, we
away.
don't. No, I want to make sure I hear you because he's not for Medicare. We don't currently have Medicare for all. I think you said.
Right.
So you're saying he wants to expand Medicare as we know it, but he's said he's not for Medicare for all. He's been against Bernie on that.
He is talking about slowly getting there. That's his
Sort of
trajectory.
incremental.
Yeah, more incremental. Whereas, Bernie is more burn down the house, and it sounds like Biden is more like slowly roast the house. I mean, from my perspective, it just it used to be there were moderates in the Democrat Party, and now it seems to be a competition between the socialists and the progressives, and the moderates have kind of been squeezed out because even in Missouri, which is a swing state.
We used to be.
But the reason it's not because the state's changed. It's still, if you look at the ballot initiatives that have passed in the last few years,
Absolutely.
it's still a center-right state. But what we're seeing across the state, we've got office holders across the state who are Democrat office holders, county office holders, who are switching to the Republican Party because they feel like the Democrats have left them. So it's an opportunity for us. I mean, we have open primaries here. Doors are open. We want to welcome people to the Republican Party and embrace them. And if they feel like the party has left them, come on over.
Anita, you had a question about that. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
You brought up the open primary, and I was just talking to Casey a little bit about that, how Missouri does have an open primary. And I like that fact that independents can vote in either primary they choose. And possibly in this election, we could have seen, Republicans saying, well, the Republican primary isn't that interesting. Maybe I'll vote in the Democratic one, right? What do you think about that open primary system and how that might have affected today's elections,
Well,
too?
it's very controversial on our side. We have a lot of people very, very strongly that they would like to see closed primaries. And they have pushed a bill every year in the legislature to try to get that through. But I think what's happened, particularly one of the initiatives we have with the RNC and the Trump team is to register voters. Because we are seeing people who are disaffected, who aren't long-term Republicans, or maybe they were Democrats at some point or independents who are coming over to us. And so it's changed the feelings about that a little bit. We still have people who feel strongly that we should have closed primaries, but we don't have enough of them to actually make it happen.
Can you quickly tell us why they want the closed primary?
They want to make sure that people who are running for office and voting for people for office are Republicans. So they feel that if we have a candidate that's conservative, that they're truly conservative, and that we will only elect conservatives because we don't have people crossing over. And the example of that people normally give is the Claire McCaskill situation, which was several years ago.
She said that she wanted people. She
Yeah.
openly said, go vote for Todd Aiken.
Yeah, she did. And so they want to avoid that. And you do have closed primaries in a lot of states, and you have to declare a party in a lot of states. So it's not some like crazy notion. But Missourians are very independent.
They
It's
are.
the show me state, and they don't like being pinned in. Even Republicans and Democrats, they still want to have that freedom.
Yeah.
It's a very much of a libertarian sort of leaning state, even though it's conservative. On both sides of the aisle, even in the legislature, you see people are kind of like a less restrictive, let people have freedom type of
Right.
mentality.
And I think that younger people, the data show, that are less likely to associate register with a
Oh,
particular
yeah.
political party
yeah.
too.
And
So
they're
moving
definitely
forward,
libertarian.
That's
You know,
right.
these young people, even the people that we see coming into our party, they are not as concerned about some of the social issues and much more libertarian. They're very libertarian on marijuana, I can tell you that. And they travel to different states where marijuana is legal, and they think that's fine. Now, if you go with some of our older voters in the Republican Party, most of them are not good with legalized marijuana. So those are some differences, but it's a big tent. We welcome everybody.
A lot we can unpack there, but first I want to get to a question.
Just wanted to make sure we update this, that NBC is now also calling Missouri, Biden from Missouri. This is the numbers that we showed you earlier were from the Associated Press, but we have just received alert that NBC is also calling Missouri for Biden. We also have a question from Magdalene asking, this is perfect because of Gene being on the set, is wondering if Missouri is a blue or red state.
I just realized you have a microphone on, Jordan. I'm sorry. I'm so glad. Now we'll stop repeating your questions. Okay, are we red or blue? We used to be bellwether, meaning that we voted for the winning president for however many elections in a row up
until 2008.
Up until 2008, when Obama barely lost Missouri, I believe.
Right. Well, I think that the polling we have shows that we're a red state, but only by a few points. And
Only
so,
by a few
yeah.
points.
Yeah,
I
if you
think-
look at just identification, there's still people in the middle. We look at, there are a lot of people who say that they're independent, but we look at other things and how they lean. It's about depending on the polling, it's about a 4 to 6 differential, red to blue. So that Nicole Galloway just won the auditor's race. That wasn't that long ago. And again, the different initiatives.
Yeah.
And we had
Raising minimum wage, legalizing marijuana,
right.
against right to work, all
Right.
these sorts of things.
And
yeah.
wasn't that long that most of our statewides were Democrats.
before 2016.
Before 2016. So and I'm very cognizant of this, like we can't take our foot off the gas, and we're working very hard and getting the messaging out, and we can't become complacent.
So to that point thing, you said so President Trump won in 16 by 19 points, and your polling says he has about a 10-point advantage now. Does that worry you, even though that sounds comfortable for a lot of people? Like Governor Greitens did not win by 20 points. He barely won, if I recall, but with that 20-point bump from the president. Are you worried about the president only being up by 10?
Not at all. I mean, and
Not for the presidential race, but for the down ballot stuff.
No, and actually, Governor Parson is polling ahead of that. So our statewides are all polling very well in Missouri. They're doing a great job. They have good name ID. And they've also done a great job of raising money. And if you look at the fundraising, I mean, that's how you get your message out. And it's a big state. So if you're running a statewide campaign and you haven't raised hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars at this point to get your message out, it's going to be tough. And so we have a huge cash advantage there. We also have a better organization, to be honest. I mean, the Republican organization throughout the state is pretty strong. Our grassroots network is very strong. And we have a great way to communicate our message in a very cheap and effective way, because we have through social media and just networks. I mean, we track everybody. We know where we have people in every county that we can talk to by hitting a button.
That's what President Obama kind of started.
Right.
But now the Trump administration, or the Trump campaign, I should say, has picked that up, it sounds like. I mean, they're much more organized, would you say, than they were in 16?
Oh, yeah, they're very organized. But I would also tell you that the Missouri Republican Party, we have a county handbook that we use that the RNC is adopting and sharing with other states. It's something that's been done here for a very long time. So we have a rich history here. And I know, John Hancock is here, who's involved in the party and been involved for a long time. People like that who really put a lot of effort into making sure the organization was well run and could continue on for years. And so it makes my job a lot easier because I don't have to create something. I just have to keep it up and running and hopefully make it better. But yeah, we have a great organization in Missouri, and we have a lot of very faithful grassroots people.
And that can be part of the difference too, when you look at these more liberal ballot initiatives, but then say, why do conservative officials keep getting elected? Part of that is the party organization, the work that
Party
you're doing.
organization, good candidates.
Yeah.
Because of the organization, we're able to recruit great candidates. And then the fundraising as well. So, and on our side, we have a really great organization called the House Republican Campaign Committee. So we have this huge majority in the Missouri House, but they have infrastructure, and they go out and recruit candidates, and they help them raise money, and they help them do social media, and those things really make a difference. And so, if you get the opportunity to meet someone and hear their message repeatedly, it's just marketing, and then you go to the ballot box and you've heard their name, you've met with them, you've seen their literature, and the other person you've never seen before or heard of, you're more likely to vote for the person.
That sounds like callous, but I guess that's just the way the world works now. I mean,
well,
that's how
not
you...
in a presidential race, but when you're
Yeah.
talking about really, when you go far down the ballot, but if you're a statewide, a Senate race, a congressional race, people know who these folks are. But money does make a difference because you've got to get your message out. It's not because people look and say who raised the most money. It's because you
Right.
can, whether it's digital, mail, or hiring people to go door to door for you, you need those funds to get your word out.
You touched on something that I have heard kind of anecdotally, so I'll be interested to the two of you if this matches up with polling, but the younger person, they have that libertarian streak that you're talking about.
Right.
They may have they may have a fiscally conservative mindset. They don't want to pay a dime, well, of course, who does, more taxes than they
Right.
have to. But they also are very comfortable with gay marriage or marijuana legalization. What does that, but yet that can be different than your established kind of long-term loyal party members. How do you marry those two together?
Well, I think that you see that in both parties. I mean, I think you have older voters on the Democrat side as well who are a little more conservative than younger. It's just a generational thing, and a lot of us get more conservative as we get older, and some of us, maybe we were more liberal when we were younger, and then we started paying taxes, or we started having a family, and we worry about things like crime and those sort of things. But I think that, you just have to be open and accepting and not be so hard-lined. I mean, we've had some conversations in meetings, whether it's at the county level or at the state level, when we get together, about how there's differences of opinions. Even our platform is not perfectly aligned with the national platform or with Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is a different sort of president than a traditional conservative Republican. And yet he is beloved by our party. I mean, he has so much support among Republicans because he gets the job done. And I think that you're seeing more people saying, let's not nitpick on every little thing that we don't like about this candidate or that we disagree on. Let's figure out that these core things are really important to us. We love our state, we love our country, and we believe that we align best with this side, more so than the other side, and therefore we're going to work together. And let's just overcome those differences and make it happen.
And I think that's the same conversation that Biden and Sanders voters are going to be having.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering if you may not tell us this, and the Democrats might not say this either, but I just wonder if there is not a third party coming down the road.
Well, you have to wonder. I mean, it sounded like Sanders was hinting at that at some point, and now he seems to have backed off of it a little bit.
Yeah, he says he'll support the nominee.
Well, and I just wonder how many of his supporters will. I don't know if the Bernie Bros are going to show up. We just don't know. So I don't think they showed up in the numbers that they needed to for Hillary. We're hoping they don't show up, but we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So we'll see what happens with the results tonight and just see, what's he going to do after tonight? I'm anxious like you are to see how everything falls out because I'm a political junkie and I just kind of want to see what's happening.
Yeah, look at the math after tonight and see where it leads us.
See what happens.
Gene Evans, chairman of the Missouri Republican Party. Thank you so much for stopping by. This was fun, and we appreciate your candor.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
All right, that was fantastic. Our thanks to Gene. We have more guests coming. You're going to see Jordan kind of make the switch to the microphones. Let's see. Jordan, are you aware of any more numbers that have come in while we've been chatting, or anything else more specific that
Shelley, can you put up the last numbers you have? We did check the GOP screens, but we have not seen anything, and these numbers are the same as they were before with one precinct reporting.
So that's huge, Anita, right there.
It is.
So what do you make of that?
That is near the levels of South Carolina victory for Joe Biden.
Does that mean we're a southern state?
When we talked about this last week, remember me telling you that I thought politically and demographically we were more similar to the southern states than some of the others. And I think that's part of what we're seeing coming through here, that rallying support behind Joe Biden. And so I think these are sort of the results that we had anticipated in Missouri. We'll see if how those hold up with more precincts reporting.
I think our next guest has just arrived, Reverend Darrell Gray.
Yes, how y'all doing?
Fine, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Jordan's going to get him mic'd up here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And we'll get a Democratic perspective. You have an actual, I think of you wearing so many different hats, figuratively and literally. You're a man that can wear a hat.
Thank you very much.
With the Democratic Party, are you the secretary? Okay, very good, of the Missouri Democratic Party. Well, how are you feeling tonight with the numbers we saw there with Joe Biden in a landslide win?
Well, I was speaking to another media crew yesterday, and I think that when we looked at it, we kind of anticipated that the vice president would win it. The whole idea about how much, we didn't know. We remembered what happened with Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton. Very close rate, 1,600 votes. We knew that the progressive faction of the party had been working since that race, particularly in St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield, Columbia. So we thought it would be close.
Who did the Democratic Party in Missouri want to win tonight?
Either candidate.
It seemed, let me allow me to redirect. Strike that last question. I saw, let's see, Board President Reed. I saw a former ambassador. I saw a couple of other I saw a lot of people in office as Democrats.
Former governor?
Former governor Jay Nixon.
That's right.
Yes, Lyda Crewson, all getting behind Joe Biden. Kind of like we've seen around the country. It seemed like they were kind of coalescing behind him.
I think they looked, listen, you look at the demographics of Missouri.
That's right.
The reality being, once you get outside of St. Louis, Columbia, and Kansas City, you're in Missouri. And if the Democratic Party is going to have the kind of impact that we expect in November, without question, need a candidate that can appeal to people outside of I-70.
Right.
And I think those people that you mentioned believe that Joe Biden would be the better candidate to do that.
Do you think, too, with the down ballot races like the Ann Wagner-Jill Shoup race, the Nicole Galloway, some of these races, that might be the preferential person at the top of the ticket?
I think that if you look at it, the moderate wing of the party in Missouri wanted Joe Biden. There, the machine is in place. Most of the elected officials who are Democrat throughout the state would probably consider themselves moderate,
Right.
leaning a little bit left. Joe Biden, without question, would help those candidates.
You mentioned, though, the progressives have been getting organized. Those are the folks often who are in the streets of Ferguson, who are trying to shut down the workhouse. Are those not the folks who are better for the African Americans living in St. Louis City County and the rest of Missouri? And how do you square that? It seems like there might be a little division there.
Well, it's interesting because in addition to being the secretary of the party, I'm also the chair of the Progressive Caucus for the party. I tell people
You
that
feel that tension.
Oh, yeah.
You live in that tension.
I tell you that the best thing that happened for me during this whole process is when the 4 officers of the party were told, you can't say who you want to support. So,
Big pressure off of you.
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
The reality too is, even within the party, there is a difference between black progressives and white progressives. Now, Bernie Sanders, without a doubt, for me as chair of the Progressive Caucus, I supported everything he was saying. Every policy position he made, I support that. As the secretary of the party, I say, okay, right now in Missouri, what is in the best interest of the party? And so I think that Vice President Biden still had the loyalty of older black voters, black union voters. But I do think that young black voters very much gravitated towards the energy and the appeal of Senator Sanders, without a doubt. I think moving forward, I think the party is going to look at the issues that people are concerned about, and particularly in my community, we're talking about common sense gun laws, we're talking about health care, we're talking about raising the minimum wage. In my community, that's important. And the Democratic Party has stood for it. The candidates that we are pushing forward in the general election, including Nicole Galloway, are for these issues. And now that the primary is over for the presidential candidate, we're going to focus on those issues. And not so much the president. We're going to push the presidential candidates and support the nominee, whoever he is. But in Missouri, I think we're going to push issues. We're definitely going to work with down ballot candidates, and we're going to try to bring together that energy and that excitement that we saw in the progressive wing, and fuse it within the political machine of the moderates. And we believe we're going to be successful in November.
Sounds like a similar conversation Republicans might be having about the changing demographics of their party. Jordan's got a question. Let's go to that.
Not so much a question. Well, we have had some questions asking why we have only been showing the Democratic results.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure everyone understands that we are still waiting for results to come in from the GOP primary, but right now we have not received any.
I got a dumb question, Anita. Who are the
Prediction: Donald Trump wins Missouri.
I was going to say they haven't called that one yet.
I'm calling it.
I would challenge 9 of 10 voters to name another person on the Republican ballot. I believe you can. Well, Walsh.
Bill Weld. Yep.
Did I say?
No, Walsh and
Walsh.
Weld, but
Yeah,
Walsh
yeah.
has dropped out. So Bill
Yeah.
Weld is the only other candidate,
Still active.
nationwide candidate in the race on the ballot.
Jordan, did you mean, is this, I have a COVID-19 update on my phone.
Yes,
Is that
Carol just sent that to us. If we thought it might be an interesting thing to discuss, possibly how is the coronavirus also affecting voter turnout as well as the election?
And do you mind if I just loop back for
Please.
a second? Because you talked about younger African American voters and being more progressive. And I think that's true for younger voters of all demographics, right? And that's been a big part of the Sanders coalition. But we're seeing that turnout lower this year. Do you have thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, we looked at it. We looked at California. We looked at all of the senators' rallies, and you saw it. Tons and tons and tons of young people.
Yeah,
But then when we got to election night, we saw that they were not there.
right.
And we're still looking at that. We're still talking to young people. We're still asking the question, why not? I still believe that young people are waiting. I believe they're waiting for November. I think that they're saying, listen, we're going to get involved in the process. We are excited, but we want to wait until the smoke clears and the dust settles. And then we want to put all of our energy, our voting energy, into that one spot. And I think that in the African American community, it's about the same.
Yeah.
A lot of money. I mean, Mr. Bloomberg put in a lot of money throughout the state. We're hoping to use the network that he created, the infrastructure that he created.
I think you have 45 staffers in Missouri, right?
And a lot of them were young black
Yeah.
staffers. And a lot of them were post-Ferguson, Stockley protesters and activists. And so
Did he seek them out, or did they find him?
I think it was both. It was both. I mean, I talked to a lot of folk who came to me and said, well, Reverend Gray, what do you think? It's Bloomberg. I said, listen, it's an opportunity for you to get some experience,
Right.
to network, and to get paid. Did I think that Bloomberg would get any traction in the state? No. But it was an opportunity for folk in our community to get some resources and some experience that they needed, that at the end of the day, and Bloomberg mentioned it too, use that for November.
This is probably a small percentage of young people who go to the Bernie Sanders rallies, but I wonder, there's a lot of meat on the bone when he talks. He talked for almost 45 minutes the other day. It's like a lecture, whereas Joe Biden was more like a pep rally. And I just wonder if there's some curiosity in that crowd. They haven't really committed to supporting him, and therefore they don't show up come election day.
I think that's a good analysis. I think that, Bernie does have that mystique, no question about it. And he will draw people. And what we, I think, have to figure out how to marry the mystique and the machine. And we've got some work to do here in Missouri, but we feel pretty confident that we can be successful in November.
Do you think you can energize young voters around Joe Biden?
I think we have to.
I think that's right.
I'll tell you who's going to energize young voters around Joe Biden: Donald Trump.
He is the biggest motivator in 2018 for and against, right?
Without a doubt.
Can you really win an election that way? I'm not him.
Yeah, good question. 'Cause that was part of Hillary's strategy.
Yeah, but you know what? Hillary had her own problems within the African American community. 3 strikes you're out, super predator. Joe Biden doesn't have that, and Joe Biden.
And the white working class community too, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, when you don't show up to Michigan, you've got to show up to Michigan. There's some places that you've got to go.
Wisconsin.
And Wisconsin. And like I said, finally, I mean, for me, Joe Biden can still say, I was Barack's vice president.
He does say that occasionally.
Yeah. He kind of backed it off a little bit, and then he kind of moved back in it. And I think in our community, I think North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, I think that those places continue to show that being Barack's partner isn't a bad thing.
Have you noticed that Senator Sanders commercials in Missouri
And-
also
and
feature?
Bloomberg.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
all do. You're right.
everybody.
It looks like he had 3 vice presidents.
People in my work actually said, like, which one did Barack Obama endorse? Because I see him on all the commercials. I said, none of those are an endorsement.
And you think about in Missouri, Barack Obama versus John McCain, God rest his soul, only lost by 3,600
Right, closest
votes.
race in the nation.
That's right. In Missouri. And so listen, I always say this hope for Missouri. I love Missouri. This hope for Missouri.
It's still a state that wants to hear your case and make up its mind.
Well, it's still the show me state. And I think that the Democratic Party still has a job to do. But I go back to 3 ballot initiatives that we had. And some people call them progressive ballot initiatives. They won in the state by over 60%.
Talking about right to work going down.
Minimum
Minimum
wage.
wage clean, that's right.
Yep.
And those were so-called progressive initiatives. I believe that Missourians will look at what is going to be best for them individually and for their families and for the state. And I believe that Missourians will work to improve the state that we're in.
Jordan was just getting your mic a little closer so we could hear you. I got I'm sorry. Say again. Oh, there we go. And asking you shall receive online audience. Donald Trump is leading 96-2 to 1. I'm not great at math. That comes out to 99. So who knows where that other 1% is? But nevertheless, perhaps I think that was pretty safe to say that one's going to happen there. I don't know what the question is here, Reverend, but the thought that kind of came to my mind as you were talking a little bit earlier about the policies of Bernie Sanders versus the electability, perceived electability of Joe Biden. It's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Democrats are saying, look, it's a two-step process. First, we get this guy out of office. I say that. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the president.
Right.
First we beat President Trump, then we'll get what we really want. Then we'll get the reforms we really want. Whereas Bernie Sanders would say, you got to do it all right now. Like you're not going to motivate voters on trust us, we'll get back to you and what you really want. Just take care of this thing first. Is that? I don't know. Again, I don't know what the question is.
Well, I mean, I think that in Missouri and within the party, I think that we are trying to be as pragmatic as possible. I think, number one, we are saying that we need to do what we need to do to defeat Donald Trump. In Missouri, we're looking at Nicole Galloway and how do we get her elected. We're looking at some congressional seats and saying how can we get them elected, and then we continue down. And so that's first. And I think that in order to do that, you have to be as pragmatic as possible. In Missouri, how far left can you lean? Not very far.
Claire McCaskill tried to figure
Claire
that out.
McCaskill. I'll tell you, a good case study would have been Roy Blunt and our former Secretary of State. And I think in that particular case, we had a Democratic Secretary of State who ran against Roy Blunt and only lost by 3%. How do you
Jason
do?
Kander.
Jason Kander. So how does Jason do that? Jason does that by, Jason's a moderate, realizing that statewide you have to kind of tilt right. And I think that we were okay with that too, because we understood that. You tilt right because you want to win. And then once you win, you govern. And then once you govern, then you can determine policy.
People can re-elect you or not based on how you govern.
Right. And I think that we have to begin to have those types of serious discussions. Be you moderate, be you independent that leans Democrat, or if we're progressive. And I think that it's okay to have that conversation. The Democratic Party says it's okay to have that conversation. It's okay for us, what was it last time? You know, like I said, 1,600 votes. And even going into this election, 48% to 44%. That's what was being projected. Because we realized that everyone was talking and the progressive wing was organizing.
You see the number on the screen there is 314-444-5125. I can say it off the top of my head because I call it every day. Now it'll take your text messages and questions as well. And if you have anything, we'll get it on Facebook as well. Jordan, you got something for us?
Right now, just a lot of people just commenting back and forth, but I do want to remind people that Facebook is live. We have 300 people watching right now, and if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, please just go ahead and post in Facebook, and I'll be happy to read that question to our panel.
That's fantastic. 300 people. I did not think my mother could get that many people to watch. That's
my mom, too.
Oh, that's a good point.
And my wife too.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Who was probably just right around the corner, just telling everybody.
Hey, the Republicans were just on, and they said they got a playbook that's so good, they're printing copies for the rest of the country. Are you as organized? You just talked about all the strategies in the state. Are you as organized as the Republicans in Missouri?
Even more. We're even more organized. I mean, I do think that we're ready. If you look at the last special elections. I mean, we picked up a couple of seats in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's real. And so, and I think that nationally, we have the House. I think that there's some Senate seats that we're really, really looking at. I think the Republicans are putting on a good face, and they should. The Democrats are doing the same. But I think that each party understands that this is it, that it is game time. And you can't wait till August. You definitely can't wait till September. And so that everybody's trying to tweak what's going on. And so I know we're looking around the country. We looked at New Hampshire, and then we looked at South Carolina. We looked at Alabama, and we're definitely going to look at the Midwest. The Midwest is key in so many ways. I mean, we're the heart of America. And don't discount how people are looking at Missouri, which basically reflects the rest of the country. When we look at the white voters, non-white voters, African-American voters, women voters, you look at it, it spells out America. Missouri.
Voters who've lost their jobs to automation and other
Exactly.
changes in the industries.
Exactly. And so people are looking to see more so how independents are voting, how women are voting, how independents are voting.
Jordan, you got a question from the...
From Nathan, he's asking if Bernie can win, if he could win, how do you think he will change the country?
I think if Bernie can win, that's an excellent question.
Because the underlying question is, he might not have anybody who wants to go along with him, and presidents can't do, well, there is a lot of, we've seen a lot of leeway in executive orders, but you can't, for instance, radically change healthcare as one person.
No, I mean, and I think that Bernie will work to try to work more through executive order than anything else. If Bernie wins, we don't know, and I think that that's the fear of the party. We don't know what will happen in the House. We don't know if Bernie will have the help that he'll need in the Senate. We're already down votes in the Senate.
Where you've
So
got to
that's
get to 60 to get anything done.
Exactly. And so, executive order. Now, Donald Trump used executive order. And he was able to change a whole lot. He was able to reverse a lot of the Obama era.
Some of his executive orders.
Exactly. But you can't govern through executive order alone. You have to think about the Supreme Court in particular, which is major moving forward. And I think that when we look at the presidency over the next 2 years, not even 4, but the next 2 years, what's the Supreme Court going to look like in 2 years?
Just based on the age of the current
Exactly.
justices.
And so, that's an issue. I mean, I look back at President Obama. I jokingly say that Congress allowed President Obama to be president 2 years out of the 8 that he served.
The first two.
The first 2. And then after that,
He lost his majorities.
He did. That midterm election right after that changed everything for him.
Of course, his detractors would say that was a referendum on Obamacare, as we know it now, and that's the way the system's supposed to work. But
Well, and President Trump supporters would say the same thing happened to him, right?
Right. So I think that I have a lot of respect for Senator Sanders. I can say this now. I worked for him when he ran against Hillary Clinton. We introduced him to the civil rights movement through Martin King III and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Understood why Jesse Jackson endorsed him. I get it. I'm an officer of the Missouri Democratic Party. And we made it very clear that we're going to support whoever the nominee is. And it's still not over. It's still not over.
But in Missouri, being President Obama's number 2 was stronger than 45 minutes on policy that might resonate more with the African American voter.
Particularly in the African American community. There's no question about it. And once again, for African American voters, Joe Biden is a familiar face. He's not new to the African American community. That being said, I've spoken to a lot of young people, even today, working the polls, who are extremely supported and still excited about the possibilities of a President Bernie Sanders.
Sure.
Do you have the same problem the Republicans were just talking about when it comes to that younger voter versus your older voters, the younger voters who were at the Bernie rally versus some of the older voters who, in just a past year, I believe, wanted a plank in the state platform that allowed for pro-life in a Democratic Party? Do you have a melding job that has to be done there, and can you do it, or do you see a third party breaking off between the two?
No, I don't see the third party. I think that for better or for worse, it's a marriage. We have two parties in this country, and I think that in the African American community, you'll see the propensity to stay with one or the other, for the most part, the Democratic Party. We do have within the African American community a lot of young people who are still a bit disenchanted and disgruntled with the party system. But they are looking to become more involved, and I think that you have a guest that'll be coming up, Representative Rasheed Aldridge, that fits that. You know, we looked at Representative Bruce Franks, that fits that. Representative Kevin Windham and Rachel Prouty and Wiley Price, all millennials. So they're trying to find a way to fit in, to be vocal, to stand their ground. And I know that the Missouri Democratic Party has said, come on, we need to hear it. Change our minds. But more than change our minds, help us to change this party so that whoever looks at it will see it as being diverse and reflective and open to whatever criticisms we get from the left, from the right, or from the center. And I think that's the kind of party we're trying to build here in Missouri.
Well, with that, I just, in the interest of trying to be fair, I think we just almost accidentally hit the same amount of time. We just spoke with Gene.
We're just that good.
We're just that good. Better lucky than good. So, Reverend, thank you for your time. I don't know if you're here. Hang on, I have. Here you go. There you go. There you go.
My wife has some back there, and I do take all the precautions. I'm not as overly as I probably should be. But,
No need to panic, whatever the case may be. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Jordan's going to switch the mic. You had a thought. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Well, the hand sanitizer reminded me that Jordan did bring up earlier, and I
There
think
you
we
go.
got
Yeah.
sidetracked about the impact the coronavirus might have on turnout today.
So, and then the thing that the tidbit there is, I think, are you bringing on our next guest? I think.
I think Rasheed's coming next.
Okay, fantastic. Rasheed Aldridge
That's
is
why I
coming.
called his name. Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You said, Jordan told us, COVID-19 update. SLU announces the suspension of most in-person instruction on campus learning. I'm sorry. Okay. Suspension of most of their in-person instruction and on-campus learning for next week. Online classes will not be affected. You might be getting an email like that sooner rather than later.
We did get an email at UMSL telling us how to prepare in case that would happen, and of course students are asking about it.
Rasheed, welcome. Are you shaking hands or bumping fists?
I mean, I'm shaking hands.
We
good,
just
how are
sanitize
you? All good my way.
State representative from the 78th.
78
Good to
district.
see you.
And feel free to adjust your chair however you want there, but you look good. Thank you for
thank
being
you.
here.
I'm glad
We were
to be
just
here.
talking about if the coronavirus, COVID-19, might have had an impact today, and you were saying.
Yeah, well, so we just saw that Sanders and Biden both canceled their Ohio campaigns, or their rallies, and that President Trump didn't hold a rally in Michigan last night, which
Right.
this is the first time he hasn't had a rally on the books since the beginning of the year. I think it's interesting, too, that Washington State is doing primary election instead of caucus this year, because the caucus, with what's happening in Seattle, could have really lowered their turnout. So they have mail-in ballots, and they're warning everyone, don't lick the envelopes,
Oh my
use
goodness.
a wet sponge.
wow.
So
I know a lot
hopefully it
of,
won't affect it.
And
Yeah.
I know a couple of Trump top staffers actually have been self-quarantined.
That's right.
And it took him a minute to come out to be like, I don't have it, or I haven't been tested yet. So it's kind of
Because there was someone infected at CPAC. And
Right.
So that's
The conservative
people
conference.
Came in.
this is all a mess.
So the last time I saw you, you were doing a pretty rousing speech, I think I can say objectively, just as a public speaking analysis in the Stiefel Theater. I think you were the next to last person to introduce Bernie Sanders to a pretty rowdy crowd. Rowdy, again, in energy. They didn't do anything wrong.
I get it.
How you feeling tonight? Your guy did not win.
I'm still fired up and pumped and ready to go. You don't win them all. You take some bumps and bruises. You may get a couple losses, but you figure out what happened, and then you analyze it the next day and you say, we got these states coming up on another Tuesday. How do we make sure we connect with voters? How do we get our issue out there? How do we make sure we talk about stuff that apparently people in the states before didn't get emotionally attached to or didn't feel like I was the right candidate at that moment. So, it's not over till we get to the convention, but at the end of the day, one thing that I really have appreciated out of both candidates, ultimately I do feel Bernie is the better candidate out of Joe Biden. He brings this excitement. He talks about issues when it comes to working people that I think Joe Biden may have the history of doing. He's been there for a while, but he doesn't talk about it in the way that Bernie Sanders talks about it. And when we're coming from a president 45 that has been so divisive, that has been so trying to separate us, no matter if it's your ethnicity, your income, your religion, you need somebody. You need that Obama hope, and that's what Bernie brings, that kind of Obama hope. But ultimately, whoever wins out of this nomination, there's too much at stake in the Democratic Party to not get along. There's too much at stake for residents in my district to not get along and say that we're going to do what we did in 2016, and we take it. We look at it. We messed up. We got emotional and was like, our candidate didn't win, so I'm gonna vote a different party. We can't do that this time because we didn't see in the last 4 years or 3 years now of a president that has divided not just our cities, our country, but has divided us on a national level as well.
Go ahead.
When you look at a path forward for Senator Sanders, it seems like you need the youth vote, right? So is there a strategy for how to get youth turnout up? It's actually down this year from 2016.
I think he of course needs to probably work a little harder, but when it comes to the youth vote, I don't think that's an issue. I think what we've recently seen in the last couple of weeks, he was close in Iowa. He won New Hampshire overwhelmingly. He did a great job in Nevada. And then former Vice President Joe Biden did a good job in South Carolina.
You almost said President Obama.
I said almost Obama.
Yeah,
I miss
that's
Obama.
how tight he's running his campaign to Obama. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
From the beginning, he's been kind of aligned himself with President Obama. And
Kind of,
right? Every ad is him and Obama. And I miss
Although
Obama.
Senator Sanders has an Obama ad out
He
too.
does have one or two now. He's like, maybe this is a good strategy. But I don't think Senator Sanders has an issue with the youth vote. I think what you recently been seeing with a lot of candidates dropping out from Pete to Amy, and then recently Kamala, who was actually my first choice, and Cory Booker, and coming out endorsing Vice President Joe Biden. You've seen this kind of folks. I was watching a poll on CNN that talked about it. You still had a lot of voters that was undecided. So to have like this wave of candidates that was recently just running to now support Vice President Biden, I think has been a little unfair to Senator Sanders because we have a long stretch to this process is over. And for all of them to kind of coalesce and say this is who it needs to be, I think at the end of the day, as a Democratic Party, we was going to do that. At the convention, people talking about a broker convention. I think Senator Sanders or Vice President Joe Biden was going to come together and say, look, I don't have the most delegates. I don't have it. We're not going to have a broker convention. Let's come together and unite. But what you recently have seen, you didn't seen a part of our party. Let's be real. The Democratic Party isn't all unified. You have progressive and moderates. You didn't see a part of the party say, this is who it needs to be for this reason. And it really flipped a lot of folks' minds that may supported Pete and wanted to see let me figure out between the two candidates on where they stand, or Senator Amy where she stood, or Kamala lovers or Cory Booker lovers have all really said, well, now I have to get behind Vice President instead of letting the process work out. So we are down in the youth vote, but I think if we would have had a fair process, not right before an election, Super Tuesday of folks that was just in the race. If they was in the race and they thought that this guy was a better candidate, maybe they shouldn't have ran from the beginning.
But ultimately, it's the voter's choice, right?
It is a voter's choice. And whoever they vote for, I'm not pushing back on it. I just think sometimes those can weigh into especially when you have such a high level of folks that was still undecided. Almost 50% was still undecided. And then you have two major candidates who was in the race that dropped out.
Before Super Tuesday.
Before Super Tuesday.
Yeah, no doubt that was
Texas
intentional.
and was like, we're getting behind this guy. And, their supporters said the same thing.
I'm sending Jordan a text because I have a technical question, but I don't want to bore you with it, so look for that. It struck me as, I'm curious, you said Kamala Harris was your first choice.
She was.
You made it to Bernie. Now she might end up being Joe Biden. I don't want to be presumptuous about the outcome, but if he is your party's nominee, she could be his vice president. Does that say something about you as a Missouri voter who can see a lot of different angles, or does that say something about the party at large of all the different options and different directions you have to choose from?
I mean, I think a little bit of both. I think, I love the state that I grew up in. Sometimes we're not always perfect, but I think, Missouri voters, when they go and vote, it's not just off emotions. They make a very conscious decision of, right now we're going through issues of worrying about how you're going to keep your lights on at night. You have farmers that have been messed up by the current president with all these TIFs and tax or TAFs or
Tariffs.
Trade tariffs.
Right?
Yeah.
That have hurt working farmers as well. So I think Missouri voters, when they go and vote, we're not like Iowa, the first state to watch where we get all this media. We are literally going to vote to make sure that our children have a great future. So my community has a better outcome than it currently has. But I think on a national level, we have an issue in the Democratic Party with making sure that we're a party that speaks for all folks, and not just one group, but all folks, especially our minority individuals in the party that supports and always go. I mean, African American vote, we never steer away from voting Democrat. So I think, having folks like Kamala potentially be the VP, or Miss Abrams potentially be the VP, no matter if it's Biden or if it's Sanders, is the right way to go, because one, we need a woman. It's way overdue.
I'm not going to argue with you there.
It's way overdue, and we need somebody of color. You have, let's just be real, you have, and I support Sanders, and I'm not in favor of Biden, but you have, in the president, you have 3 current folks that are older white men running that cannot potentially talk to young African Americans like myself, that can potentially talk to young Hispanic voters and get them excited. So to have a woman on the ticket and a person of color is exactly what the party needs on a national moving forward.
She's your top choice, I guess, then for vice president, regardless.
She would be my top choice. She would be. Kamala is very tough. What a lot of people, I think, judged her in the beginning is because she was a prosecutor. She was the only candidate that wasn't just a senator. She was, then you had some billionaires like Tom Sawyer and Mike Bloomberg, but she came in a little different. She was a prosecutor elected back in 2010. When we talk about progressive now, it wasn't a hot thing to talk about, and she had to do her job as prosecutor, or she would have got, voted out by the people and later on became a young senator like former President Barack Obama. So her route to getting to where she was to being a candidate wasn't the same as the senators. And, she's tough on crime, but she understands that we cannot arrest everybody, as well as knowing that we have to have a different approach. There's people in this country that has not been getting what they deserve to get. And I think she talks to a different crowd just as well as Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden talks to a different crowd. And when you bring that all together, it's a perfect ticket to win in November.
So you're seeing some nuance there, because your route to your position started in Ferguson,
Yes,
protesting. Sir. And then from there, the Ferguson Commission, and then now at the state level as a state rep. But you're willing to back a former prosecutor.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between Kamala and also Bob McCullough. In the way that they went about prosecuting individuals. It's the thing, even in the Black Lives Matter movement, when we said Black Lives Matter, that wasn't a shade against police officers. That wasn't a shade against white folks. Saying Black Lives Matter meant saying there was an issue in the black community where we feel like our voices wasn't heard. And during the situation between Mike Brown, when he was murdered by the hands of Darren Wilson, we were saying that we didn't feel that Bob McCullough was the right prosecutor, especially when he had history with his family and law enforcement, and his family being killed by a person of color, that maybe there was some biases in there. So I think sometimes activists get labeled, but we also understand we have to have an inside-outside game, and that's why outside of just being a protester on the streets, I knew how important it was to get involved in politics. That's why I ran for committee man and now state representative, because you can't just talk about it on outside. You also have to be at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're going to be on the menu. And the only way you dictate the menu is if you're at the table. So I've grown over time, but I also understand that we can't be divisive. It's going to take all of us to come together to bring the type of communities we want to see in our state, in our neighborhood, and across this country at the end of the day.
So no matter if Vice President Biden wins or Senator Sanders, how do you see the party coming together, both sort of those factions coalescing around one candidate?
We're in a better position than we was in 2016, to be honest. Like I said, I think Senator Bernie Sanders is a better candidate than Vice President Joe Biden. But I think what we had in 2016 was it was two individuals that wasn't willing to support one another immediately
And
after
Clinton
the
and
ticket.
Sanders?
Clinton and Sanders. I think now what you've seen, and I respect it out of Senator Sanders, and I respect it out of Vice President Joe Biden, because at the end of the day, I'm a Democrat, but I call myself an issue-crat, because I know the issues that are taking place in my communities need the most attention, no matter what the party is. But I know that the Democratic Party has been a party that steps up more than the Republican Party to speak to my community. But what I respect out of both candidates, they done said whoever wins and get the nominee, we must come together, because we didn't see 3 years of divisive politics. We didn't see 3 years of a president that is saying you're not greater than someone else because of your skin tone, because of how much money you make, or based off your religion. And that's not what America is. America is a melting teapot of many cultures, of many religion, of many ethnicities, of many incomes, and being able to say we're different, but that's what makes us strong. And that's what I appreciate in both Democratic candidates. Hopefully Sanders win and take it to the convention.
But you think Sanders supporters, if it is Biden, will join
Absolutely,
forces?
I do so. And I mean, I believe so. And if Vice President Joe Biden gets the nominee, I'll make sure I talk to as many people in my district. I'll talk to my Sanders supporter and say, this is what we need, because we didn't see how far we went back after such a historic president under historic changes that was made under President Obama, and now getting 45 in office, and how far that has took us back. And we don't need to go backwards. We need to be trying to go forward. And that's what progressive is. Progressive means moving forward. We like to down each other, progressive and moderate, but the idea of progressive means moving forward. We all want to move forward, and let's move forward together.
Jordan, you have a question coming in?
Not a question, but we just learned that NBC is just called Michigan, and it's 125 delegates for Biden.
That's significant.
And they will be proportionally distributed, right? So
That is
Senator
big.
Sanders might have, I don't know if we have an idea what those percentages might look like. So,
What were the numbers again on Missouri? Or have we gotten them all in yet? We need to get them
it is
all
big
in.
because Michigan is such a big state for the Democrats. That was one of the tipping points in the 2016 general election, was
Yeah.
President Trump winning Michigan.
And it was one of the states that Senator Sanders won back in 2016 over then Secretary of State of Hillary Clinton. So
right.
it's unfortunate. One thing about, I think, the people in the Bernie camp is we're not going to give up. We're going to continue.
I think that was proven in 2016.
Yeah. We're not going to give up. We're going to continue to fight. Because we believe in a message. What Senator Sanders is pushing is a message that is talking about uplifting everybody. Not saying that Vice President Joe Biden's not doing that, but the way that Senator Sanders talks about it is we need to make sure that folks that aren't at the table, that folks that are in my district, like in Carr Square, that are in Benton Park, in areas where people overlook them and they want to go to the Central West End first, that they're also at the table, that they are part of the conversation, so that folks that just aren't always the ones at the table. And it's a little different message from Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Sanders, but ultimately whoever wins, it's going to be better than 45, what we currently have.
Well, I think we probably could leave it right there. Jordan, or do we have any questions specific to the representative? Anything else, Rasheen? I appreciate you. Real quickly, give us your thumbnail sketch of how you got to this seat. I think it's we talked a little bit about it, but when did this become a goal of yours?
I'm not gonna lie, it never was a goal. I come from the activist side of stuff. Was involved in the Fight for 15 movement, a movement that's been advocating for a livable wage, no matter where you work, if it's fast food, or if it's home care, if it's child care. You should be able to work 40 hours a week, be able to go home to your family, and to be able to put away for the future. So being involved in that movement, and then taking the skills that I learned in the Fight for 15 to apply in Ferguson, seeing how, when Mike Brown died, this wasn't the first time of seeing somebody of color at the hands of police. And I was honestly, when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, it's another person of color. But the way that it played out, the way his body laid out there, the way that law enforcement kind of disrespected the community was like, this isn't right. And I took to the streets. I later was appointed to the Ferguson Commission, which I was kind of like, I don't know, because, the former governor Jay Nixon wasn't a fan, or we as protesters wasn't a fan of some of the things that he done, if it was the curfew or calling in the National Guard. But Even then, there was a mentor that told me, like, you have to be a voice at this table for protesters, because if you're not there, you don't want other people to dictate some recommendations that's going to happen. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I did it, and I seen how it was important to be at the table. No, there's good to have an inside-outside game. It's good to also still be connected to the people on the ground, but you also want to be somebody who's making the decisions as someone who's connected to the people on the ground and better understand them. I ran for committeeman in 2016, making me the youngest Democrat committeeman in African-American committeeman in St. Louis history. And then when former state rep Bruce Frank stepped down, growing up in that district my whole life, we had made so much change with electing him. I didn't want to see it go backwards, and I felt like I was the best person, and the people in the 78th District Committee also thought I was the best and gave me the nominee. And here we go. I'm super excited to be up there and fighting for the people in my district. I got recently a bill that is lost limb awareness bill, since I have a prosthetic, that came out of committee. Is going to be coming to the House floor, and hopefully I'll get a bill passed as a redshirt freshman, so I'm excited.
Well, best of luck to you, and we appreciate you coming in to share your perspective. And sounds like you got more work to do in other states.
Oh, we're not done yet. We're not done yet.
But we'll see how it goes for the rest of the year. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it so
All
much.
right.
Thanks
Good
for
to see
having
you.
me.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
my
Good
friend.
to see you, Rasheen.
Good to see you.
All right. So real quick, so we did have some exit data here that I forgot that Jordan handed me, and I think Jordan's my boss. I think his boss handed it to him, so we better use it.
Fair.
So this was for Missouri Democratic primary voters. This is exit poll data for NBC that shows. This is again coming from NBC. Biden's support, they're calling it broad-based, especially strong backing among black voters and voters 45 or older. Biden was also the clear favorite of voters looking for someone who can unite the country, and voters whose top priority is beating Donald Trump. As Jordan is miking up our next guest, you see on your screen 314-444-5125. That's the number you call if you're not going to be able to get your lunch break on an assignment, and you let them know. It's also the number to KSTK 5 on Your Side news desk that you can now text. We will see your questions and we will take them here on our little program. Braxton Payne, I'm looking for your title, and I don't want to get it wrong, so I won't try it. Braxton, welcome to the table. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Braxton Payne. I work for a company called Show Me Victories. We're a Democratic consulting company based here in the city of St. Louis.
Fantastic. Anita Mannion, Braxton Payne.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So we were just looking at these. Let's see. I think we have a couple of there. Is that more specific? So anyway, the exit polling from NBC is looking. Tell me if I'm reading this right, but it's saying that if your priority was to unite the country, then 83% of those people with their top priority went for Joe Biden. Black voters went for 69%. 45 and older, 68%. Priority of the beating Donald Trump, 67%. Does that surprise you? Does that tell you anything?
No, I think it's a big night for Joe Biden. I mean, it really is. I mean, you saw the party over the past couple weeks really come together and publicly support Joe Biden. You know, I've been a Joe Biden supporter for a long time, but I think that it was remarkable to see what has happened. And you said 83%.
If your priority was uniting the country.
Yeah, and I think Joe Biden's theme over the past week has been that, and I think he's going to be able to do that come November. I mean, I honestly didn't expect it. I expected it to be a lot closer in Missouri tonight, as well as Michigan. But I think that Joe Biden is really just riding this wave of momentum, and he is going to be the unity candidate, as you see all the former presidential hopefuls endorsing him.
Is this enough to make him the presumptive nominee tonight, or is there more work to be done?
I think there's more work to be done. I think you have a big next Tuesday, a lot of delegates. Illinois, obviously,
Right.
is a huge state, and Florida. And I think Florida's going to be really good for Joe Biden. Bernie's never really been able to get much traction there. He doesn't spend a lot of money there. But I do think, even Illinois, downstate, as well as the Chicago metro area, I think are going to be big for Joe Biden.
So you said you were a Joe Biden guy for a long time, even before Pete, Amy, Beto, all these other people.
Yeah, so I actually went up to Iowa and the weekend before the caucuses and door knocked as a volunteer
for Joe Biden.
Yes.
Didn't look too good coming out of Iowa.
No, I was, I don't know if I was shopping per se, but it was definitely nerve-wracking to see You talk about it was what, February 1st or 2nd or 3rd, and then you had to wait till the end of February for South Carolina. That is a long time in politics. To wait 3 to 4 weeks. I was very nervous.
And the narrative about Joe Biden in that time frame probably made you nervous as well.
Yeah, and it was he got hit by the media, the national media, over and over again. But you saw that as soon as he did well in South Carolina, I think the party and a lot of party people realized, okay, our base of the party is African American, especially African American women, and they turned out for Joe Biden. They spoke loudly, and Bernie's talked a lot about driving up turnout. I don't dislike Bernie. I think he's a good candidate and a good person for this country, but he hasn't drove turnout. Some of the exit polls I saw today in just Missouri was that people over the age of 65 were up 14 percentage points.
Over 16, over 2016?
Over 2016, the Missouri Democrats.
Say that number again?
Of the turnout, it was 65 plus was 36%, which was 14 points over what it was in 2016. And people from the ages of 18 to 29 was only 12% of the turnout today, according to one exit poll I saw, and that's -4 from 2016.
And that's consistent with earlier states as well. The youth turnout, the 18 to 29 demographic has been down from 2016.
Which is disappointing because I'm in that demographic.
Yeah, I wish I were.
I would love to see more people turn out. I mean, I think a talk of a political revolution it kind of fell flat. I mean, I do think that Joe Biden talks also about he also has the record to back it up. He was able to pass bills when he was a senator and was able to really get things done as vice president. Bernie Sanders hasn't really been able to do that as a senator from Vermont.
Is this all for naught, though? The country likes to elect stars. They like celebrities, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, right? I mean,
I think Joe Biden's a star.
As much as Barack Obama, as much as Bill Clinton,
I think the Barack Obama bar is way too high for anyone to really ever get close to that. But I will say that Joe Biden he's been the guy we know, the guy we trust, and Democratic voters really resonate with that. And like I said before, I mean, older voters are the ones that are turning out. I think they're frustrated, they're scared. I saw one exit poll from Michigan that had, 83% of them were angry with the Trump administration. Not disillusioned, not disappointed. They were angry. People vote out of anger more than they do anything else, and I think that's what you really saw. And you're going to see tonight. I think it's going to be Michigan's going to be if Biden can get a lot of delegates out of Michigan. I mean, the narrative has to be with coronavirus and everything else going to dominate the news. As somebody that's behind in the race, Bernie Sanders needs those headlines, and he's not going to get them for the next week. Everything's going to be dominated by that.
How do you see the math moving forward? Since the Democratic primaries are proportionate, that makes it more challenging for Senator Sanders to gain ground in these future states. So do you see a path forward for him?
Yeah, I think it was very telling when he decided, when Senator Sanders decided not to go to Mississippi. I think he saw that there was really no delegates there to even be had. Maybe one or two he's going to get out of there. But I thought, it'll be telling where he visits, and if he's able to visit, which states he picks out of the next 4, Arizona, Florida, Illinois, and Ohio. Because I think he could do really well in Ohio. And maybe,
although those rallies have been canceled for now, right?
Exactly. And I think the thing is, even if he comes out a winner in Ohio, for example, he's only going to net maybe 10 delegates. Unlike a state like Mississippi, where Joe Biden might get nearly all of them tonight. And that's, in Missouri, it's looking like maybe a 2-to-1 margin that he could really win tonight.
Which is different from 2016, where there was a 1 delegate difference in the end in Missouri.
Yeah.
So I asked the other candidates who were more in Senator Sanders' camp, so I'll ask you from more the Biden side. Do you see a way that the party can unify around Joe Biden? Do you see Sanders supporters coming to enthusiastically turn out in November for Biden?
They're doing it now. I mean, the last week has proven that even people that you would think maybe like a Cory Booker, that would be more inclined to vote a more quote unquote progressive candidate, even though I do think Joe Biden is pretty progressive. It just didn't happen. So I do think that is there now, but I also think it's different. I think we compared a lot to 2016. The issue is with 2016, we had the unknown of Trump. We now know what a Trump White House has done for 3 years, and I think what's going to happen is no matter the voters, I'll just vote for Trump because I really don't like Hillary. I think they're going to vote for Biden because they know what
they have
Trump,
a track record to make a decision on.
And like I said, they're going to vote out of anger instead of, oh, we'll give this guy a chance. How bad can it be? As a Democrat, I think it's been pretty bad, and I think that they're going to a lot of, especially black voters that did not show up in states like Michigan. Hillary lost Michigan by 24,000 votes, and I mean that could be made up in the city of Detroit pretty easily. So I think you're going to see that, but I also think suburban white women.
But incumbents with a good economy, I'm not making, that was no comment on Wall Street.
Yeah.
That was, I want us all to stay healthy. But incumbents in a good economy just don't lose.
I think if he could stay on message and focus on the economy, that would be one thing. I was looking up I work in the digital side mostly in the political arena, and I was looking up today, what ads Trump was running on Facebook. And one of the things that I saw is almost all his ads are focused on immigration and the wall. They're not focused on the economy. Now, that could have changed in the past 24 hours, 48 hours, but you go to the archives, he's focused on the wedge issues, not the economy.
Well, could that be trying to spur his voters to vote out of anger in
I
the
would
same
think so.
way? Yeah.
And I think it's also he wants to be able to raise money and just keep his name ID and really keep his core voters, because they're the ones that are going to turn out no matter what. And maybe he can keep down the vote of others, maybe suburban people that are just disillusioned because all they see is Facebook ads. I also think it was interesting, Bloomberg, in the early results tonight, I mean, he did decently well in absentee numbers. So I think that him dropping out was a big key in endorsing Biden. I pulled some other statistics on Facebook spending, which I thought was really interesting. In just the last 7 days, Joe Biden has spent $2 million on Facebook. Senator Sanders has only spent $1.2 million. But over the course of the campaign, Joe Biden has only spent $7 million.
Yeah.
So he spent $2 million in the past 7 days, and since May of 2018, $7 million.
Is that because he didn't have the money, or he's changed
And
his strategy?
I think that's a big thing to do with
Yeah.
it. I think he's been able to raise, I mean, the last number I saw was 17 million in 48 hours.
He raised 10 million in 1 weekend, and
Yeah. And I mean, but you look at Trump with the same numbers, he's spent $33.5 million since May of 2018. So it'll be interesting for me to see. Also, we have an earlier convention this year, which I think the Democrats did a very good job on that, is, hey, let's have the convention, let's get through it, and then we have pretty much all summer to kind of end of summer and into fall to really start campaigning as with unity. And I was just talking to Rasheen. Rasheen's actually my state representative. I've known him for a while, voted for him. Supported him, and I like him a lot. And we were talking out there, and he's the first thing he says, well, we'll vote for the nominee no matter who it is.
That's coming from Bernie in a way that it didn't last time.
Yeah, I think the narrative is definitely like, okay, we've had enough, and we know how important this election is.
It's fascinating because I still think it is interesting that when the strategy is, we were talking to Reverend Gray, it's almost like for some part of the party, I realize you are all in on Joe Biden, but for some people, it's like, let's just first unelect, if you will. let's beat President Trump and then worry about things that really matter to us if we don't think Bernie is our guy. Okay, what are we looking at here now? Let's see. This is with 6% reporting. Is this Missouri, Shelley? 54 to 20.
almost twice, almost 2 to 1.
Almost doubling up. And you were saying Bloomberg, because of people voting early or voting absentee, we don't have early voting in Missouri technically.
Yeah.
But that he was doing pretty well.
He was at like 14% in St. Louis County. I was looking at St. Louis County, St. Louis City. He was about like 8%, I believe.
I think I'm
in
seeing
St. Louis
20%
City.
here. Is that possible?
Is that statewide?
This is St. Louis County.
Could
Would
be.
that have jumped that much? I don't know. I might be looking at that wrong. But nevertheless, there are a lot of votes there that could have made Joe Biden's win even bigger. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The consolidation of the party, though, I think really benefited him. Bloomberg getting out, Buttigieg and others
I had
getting
the
out.
opportunity to meet the vice president on before his rally here in St. Louis, and just seeing. I volunteered with getting everything set up, but to see the energy and the diverse crowd that came down to Keener Plaza was something I was very encouraged by, because let's be frank, Joe Biden struggled to get crowds in Iowa. Definitely New Hampshire, he barely campaigned there. Nevada, he did okay. South Carolina, he still held the traditional more town halls and more retail politics. I call it the Bill Clinton, way. Was what he was doing. And then all of a sudden, you had that big rally in Dallas the night before Super Tuesday with Klobuchar and Beto O'Rourke, and it just the mood changed. You know, you follow the people that follow the press corps that follow the Biden campaign, and even they were commenting on Twitter about, hey, this is changing. If the atmosphere is different, it's more of a party. You know, we were planning on trying to get something here in city St. Louis for the rally on Saturday. And one of the things was we want more of a block party, is what, you know, his campaign was saying. I think that's more conducive to, you know, Joe Biden, and the crowds that he's getting now, I think are telling. I will say the same thing. Yard signs don't vote, crowds don't vote, but momentum does, and we saw a lot of that over the last week. And
Do you think the president will debate whoever the nominee is?
yeah, I think the narrative now is that Joe Biden's old, and I think that's what the Trump campaign is going to push.
I mean, they're all old, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is.
We say now, give it 20, give it a long time for you. Give it
Yeah.
I'm going to
But
get out of that
Joe
one.
Biden's strength,
It's time for me to go.
Joe Biden's strength has never been in a debate of 8 people.
Sure.
Or even really honestly big rallies. I mean, he is good at a one-on-one debate and shaking hands. That is his strength. And I think a one-on-one debate, we've only seen, Joe Biden debate in the Democratic primary with a bunch of people on stage, a lot of yelling, an enthusiastic crowd. Looks like they canceled the crowd for Sunday's debate. So I think that really helps Joe Biden if it's just a one-on-one with Bernie. He can really hone in his message. Also, Joe Biden's a storyteller. So in a debate of sound bites, he doesn't do so well. So I think he'll do much better in a debate where he's able to explain why he feels a certain way on an issue.
And I do think there's a lot of people are interested in this debate because the first time we're really seeing that one-on-one within the Democratic Party instead of 6, 8, 10 people all vying for time.
Yeah, and as much as those make for great sound bites and great media, it's not really. The Democratic Party, I think we're more substantive than the Republican Party. When we saw Trump's debates, it was just, yelling, flailing his arms and, whatever to get the soundbite, which he's really good at. But when you have to talk, I think Hillary Clinton, maybe I'm biased, actually. I know I'm biased. She won all 3 debates. Yes, she won the general election, but I think she held her own because she was able to point out her issues. Now, there was a lot of other problems with that campaign, obviously, but I think that she was able to win those debates and win them forcefully, and I think that Joe Biden will be able to do the same, and that cuts off this I call it the Twitter narrative of Joe Biden is too old. Because, even meeting him one-on-one in person, he signed a baseball for Lou Brock, which was a very cool thing. That's Joe Biden. That's the Joe Biden we all know, the Uncle Joe, that we've known for so many years. And also, I don't think we've focused much on his life story. I think he has a very compelling life story, and a lot of voters, he's had a lot of heartache, and I think a lot of voters resonate with that. And I think that we saw that tonight. A state like Michigan, he helped save the auto industry, and I think he's going to win big because of that, in a state that Hillary Clinton lost by less than 2%.
A state that's critical for the Democrats in November.
Very critical. I would say that there's the 3. It was Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are ones that we have to flip back in order to have a chance at the White House.
Jordan, anything else that you think we should cover that anybody's sending in or anything of that nature? No? Shelley, good? Well, Braxton, I think we'll leave it there then. Perfect. Anita, any last thoughts from you?
Yeah. I think, it'll be interesting to continue to see the results coming in. We know the big states. We still haven't seen Washington State, so it'll be, Sanders was favored there.
Yeah, and I also think with Washington State is they moved away from the caucus, which
That's
always
right.
favors Sanders
Right.
over. And Hillary Clinton won the primary in Washington State, but lost the caucus because they had a weird system they did last time. So I think that favors, once again, Joe Biden.
And I think it's good for voter turnout, because had they had caucuses in Washington State today.
I don't think many people would be showing up.
I think you're
especially in a state like Washington, which has been
Right.
hit
That's
very
right.
hard.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. That was fun for us. Let us know what you think. Tell us where we could have done more or topics we didn't cover that you'd like to have heard, because we're going to be doing this again, hopefully anyway. Colin Jeffries is here, one of our esteemed assignment editors. He's now hiding, so apparently he doesn't have anything to add to the conversation. Jordan?
We'll be back next Tuesday.
Yes,
For the
exactly.
Illinois primary.
Yeah, let's not be St. Louis centric or westwardly biased. We will be having a primary in Illinois, which, as you pointed out, a lot of delegates at stake there.
Absolutely.
And I know Rasheen is going to be fighting for Bernie, and I'm guessing you for Biden, and just across the river.
Of course.
All right. we'll leave it there. Shelley, that looks good for us if it's good for you. All right. Thanks to all of you who either stopped by or stuck with us. We appreciate it. See you Tuesday.